You're someone who hears the Lord a lot. Tell me, how does God speak to you?
Really in a lot of different ways. Probably in the beginning he spoke to me most through pictures, because I think that was something I was most familiar with. But through impressions, a lot through the scriptures, dreams, which are sometimes difficult to interpret, but really in lots of different ways. I think most often as I've grown in hearing God, I've noticed that I'll just be walking through my day and it's as if he just kind of pokes me on the shoulder and says, just pay attention to this. And I pay attention, and then I just start collecting the things that the Lord is telling me to pay attention to.
So how would you say you recognize his voice? How do you know that's not just your imagination when you feel that poke on the shoulder, as it were?
You know, sometimes it's difficult, to be honest. I think a lot of it is just practice, and having had the Lord prove to me that it is his voice over time. In the beginning it was much, much clearer, because I think he knew that I needed to be able to recognize his voice without a shadow of a doubt. And then as I started growing in recognizing his voice, it became a little bit more difficult sometimes. And so it required a discipline for me to silence my own thoughts and my own judgments so that I could hear his better.
Mm-hmm. If you were talking to somebody who said, teach me to recognize God's voice, is there any sort of activity I could do that would really help me to recognize God's voice? What would you suggest?
I'd probably say two things. I really think knowing God's Word, the Scriptures, is very important, because it's the plumb line for truth. And so for whatever we hear, I think we need to match it up to that plumb line. Is this truth? And so that's very important. Secondly, I think just the discipline of contemplating what God is telling you. And so contemplation would just be like a quieting down of all of your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own judgments about something, letting it kind of all settle down, and then allowing God's truth to really come to the surface, and meditating on that, and just, it's like a conversation with God too. And so, but it takes a lot of discipline for me to do that. So probably those two things.
Is there any sort of example you can give us, a recent example of how God's spoken to you and how you recognize his voice?
Well, the Lord's been speaking a lot to me through dreams, and dreams are a little bit difficult for me, I think, because there are a lot of details in my dreams, and often I'm not sure how many of those details are important or pertinent to the message. And so it really has been a process of bringing them up to the Lord and letting him sift out the stuff that isn't important, and letting the themes come to the top. And so that's more of what I've been noticing, is that themes and dreams are very important. So last night I had some weird dreams, and I can usually tell if they're significant or not.
How?
You know, it's just a strong impression that there's a spiritual component to it, or a message to it. And often I think because of the themes, I know which themes are important. And so last night I had a theme, again, particularly about women, and the Lord started speaking to me about it. But in my thinking about it, mulling it over, I added a lot of things of, oh, well, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be this. And I'm kind of playing through all these things, and I just felt the Lord telling me, you know, it's not really important what you think about it, it's important what I'm telling you about it, what I think about it. So then I had to, you know, do that whole discipline of like, okay, I'm going to let all the things that I thought about it, just even the things that I want it to mean, to let it just fall into place and allow the Lord to tell me what's important. And I think he did, but it's often just a holding it and waiting, because often it's not immediate. So it really is a discipline, I feel.
Great. So is there anything else you think you would want to say to somebody who says to you, well, teach me to hear God's voice?
Just that I think more of us, or actually all of us, hear God's voice. And most of the time it's not that we don't hear him, but we don't recognize that it's God's voice. And we'll either attribute it to our own thoughts, or to just general wisdom, or whatever else, I don't know. But so I think it's very encouraging then to not wonder so much, is God speaking to me, but how is he speaking to me, and how can I discern his voice and grow in that love relationship and hearing him and being intimate with him.
Leslie, that's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks.